Hi there, I'm Claudia Thompson. I'm 35, a single mom living in suburban Chicago. My son Ethan, he's the light of my life. I adopted him 5 years ago when he was just a little peanut, and it's been the best decision I've ever made. Ethan, honey, have you finished your math homework? I called out, stirring a pot of mac and cheese on the stove. Almost done, Mom, he shouted back from the living room. I couldn't help but smile. That kid, always pushing his homework to the last minute. But he's sharp, just like his mom. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend, Melissa. Hey girl, we still on for wine night Friday? I quickly typed back, you bet, I need it after this week's shifts. Being a pediatric nurse is no easy feat, but it's rewarding. Speaking of work, I found my mind wandering to Dr. James Carter, the kind-hearted pediatrician who always goes the extra mile for the kids. And well, let's just say he's not hard on the eyes. Mom, can we go to the park after dinner? Ethan bounded into the kitchen, his homework evidently forgotten. Sure thing, champ, but only if you're really done with that homework. At the park, I watched him dribble his soccer ball across the grass. The kid's got skills. Look, Mom, I'm going to be the next Messi. You sure are, buddy. I laughed, snapping a quick photo for Instagram. Later that night, as I tucked Ethan into bed, a wave of gratitude washed over me. This little boy had made my dream of motherhood come true. Good night, sweetie. I love you to the moon and back, I whispered, kissing his forehead. Love you more, Mom, he mumbled sleepily. The next morning, while running through my mental to-do list, I realized my driver's license was about to expire. Hey, Ethan, want to go on an adventure to the DMV with Mom? He groaned in dramatic dismay. Do I have to? Come on, it'll be fun. We'll grab ice cream after, I said, bragging and shamelessly. Okay, deal. Little did I know that this routine trip to the DMV was about to upend our lives. As we walked into that plain, gray government building, I had no idea of the storm that was about to hit. But that's life, isn't it? You never see the curveballs coming. Ready for some thrilling bureaucracy, kiddo? I joked, ruffling Ethan's hair. As long as there's ice cream at the end, I'm ready for anything, he grinned back. The DMV was its usual chaos. Ethan and I sank into the hard, plastic chairs for what would likely be a long wait. You brought your book, right? I asked. Yep, right here. He held up his favorite adventure novel. That's when I noticed a man watching us from across the room. He was in his 40s with a scruffy beard and intense eyes. I looked away, hoping he'd stop, but his gaze stayed locked on us. Suddenly, he stood and made his way over. Excuse me, he said, his voice trembling. I'm Robert Lawson. That boy, he's my nephew, Michael. He went missing 3 years ago. My heart skipped a beat. What? No, you're mistaken. This is my son, Ethan. I'm sure it's him. We need to do a DNA test, Robert insisted, his voice growing louder. People around us were starting to stare. Ethan looked up, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. Sir, you're making a mistake. I adopted Ethan when he was 3. I have the papers. I shot back, my voice steady but my heart pounding. Those must be fake. That's my sister's son, Robert shouted, his voice full of desperation and anger. A security guard approached us, assessing the tension. Is there a problem here? He asked, eyes darting between Robert and me. I stood up, instinctively placing myself between Robert and Ethan. Yes, I said firmly, this man is harassing us. We're leaving. As I hurried us out of the DMV, Robert's voice followed. I'll take legal action if I have to, he called out, his words lingering ominously in the air. The next few weeks were a nightmare. Robert had hired a lawyer and filed for a DNA test. He even started a Facebook page called Bring Michael Home, spreading vile lies about me. My phone buzzed constantly with hateful messages. Kidnapper. How dare you steal someone's child, you monster? The relentless accusations kept me up at night. At work, I was exhausted and distracted, and my performance began to slip. Dr. Carter, noticing my state, pulled me aside one day. Claudia, are you okay? You seem distracted. It was the smallest show of kindness, but it was enough to break down my defenses. Tears spilled over as I confided in him, sharing everything. He listened patiently, his gaze full of concern. I'm so sorry you're going through this, he said gently. Is there anything I can do? I shook my head. Unless you can make this nightmare disappear. At home, the tension was getting to Ethan too. One night, I heard him crying softly in his room. Honey, what's wrong? I asked, wrapping my arms around him. Are they going to take me away? He sobbed, his small body trembling. I held him tight, my heart breaking. No, baby, I won't let that happen. You're my son, no matter what. But inside, fear gnawed at me. What if the adoption wasn't legal? What if I could lose him? Desperate, I called Melissa. This is insane, she said, her voice steady but sympathetic. Have you thought about doing the DNA test? Prove he's not related to this guy. But what if it shows something else? I whispered, voicing my deepest fear. What if there was a mix-up at the agency? Claudia, you can't live like this. You need to know the truth. She was right. The next day, with my hands trembling, I called my lawyer. I'll do it, I said, my voice barely steady. I'll take the DNA test. The wait was excruciating. Each time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped, wondering if it was the call that would change everything. To keep myself from spiraling, I took matters into my own hands. I hired a private investigator, Mike Russo, to look into Robert's past. I'll dig deep, Miss Thompson, he assured me. If there's anything shady, I'll find it. Meanwhile, Dr. Carter had been an incredible support. One evening, he called me, his voice tense. Claudia, I've been looking into that adoption agency. Something doesn't add up. My stomach twisted. What do you mean? There are irregularities in several cases, including Ethan's. I can't say more over the phone. Can we meet? The next day, over coffee, he laid out the documents he'd uncovered. My hands shook as I looked at the evidence. This can't be happening, I whispered, feeling as if the ground was crumbling beneath me. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Mike. Miss Thompson, I found something. This Lawson guy, he's a career con artist, insurance fraud, identity theft, you name it. Relief flooded through me, quickly followed by anger. That man had put us through hell. But my relief was short-lived. The DNA results had arrived. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. Ethan's not related to Robert, I exhaled, feeling a brief surge of relief. But as I read further, my blood ran cold. Ethan matched a missing child from Florida. Dr. Carter placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. Claudia, I'm so sorry. I felt like I was drowning. What did this mean? Had Ethan been stolen? The days that followed blurred together. Robert was arrested for fraud and harassment, but I could hardly savor the victory. The thought of losing Ethan haunted me. One night, as I tucked him in, he looked at me with concern. Mom, are you okay? You seem sad. I fought back tears. I'm okay, sweetie. Just tired. I love you so much, you know that. I love you too, Mom, he said, wrapping his arms around me in a tight hug. As I left his room, I finally let myself break down. How could I have unknowingly been part of something so terrible? The idea that Ethan had been taken from his real family made me feel sick, but the thought of losing him was unbearable. I called Melissa, my voice barely steady. What am I going to do, Mel? I can't lose him. He's my son. We'll figure this out, she said firmly. You're a great mother, Claudia. That has to count for something. That night, I pored over photo albums, reliving every moment with Ethan. His first steps, his first day of school, every scraped knee and bedtime story. How could all of this be built on a lie? The next morning, I made a decision. I had to find Ethan's biological family. It would break my heart, but I knew it was the right thing to do. I owed it to Ethan and to the people who had lost him. As I dialed the number for the Florida Police Department, I felt like I was signing my own death warrant. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever was about to unfold. I had to face this head-on for Ethan because that's what a real mother does. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I worked tirelessly with the authorities, determined to uncover the truth about Ethan's adoption. Each revelation felt like a punch to the gut. Miss Thompson, we've uncovered a child trafficking ring, Detective Johnson informed me gravely. Your adoption agency was at the center of it. I felt nauseous. How many children? Dozens, he replied. We're making arrests as we speak. As the case unfolded, I braced myself for the hardest part, meeting Ethan's biological parents. When they arrived, I was a nervous wreck. Hi, I'm Lisa, and this is my husband, Tom, the woman said, her eyes red from crying. We sat down, and I listened as they shared their heartbreaking story. Our baby died, Tom said, his voice breaking. We never even got to hold him. Just then, Ethan came home from school. The moment he walked in, Lisa gasped. He looks just like you, she said softly. We spent hours talking, looking at photos, sharing stories. It felt surreal and emotional, but as the day wore on, I noticed Lisa watching Ethan with a mix of longing and love. Finally, she took a deep breath. Claudia, we can see how much you love our son and how much he loves you, she said. Tom nodded in agreement. We've talked about it, and we think Ethan should stay with you. I was stunned. But he's your son. Technically, he's your son too, Lisa said gently. We'd like to be part of his life if you're open to that. But you're his mother. You've raised him, loved him. We can't take that away from you. Tears streamed down my face as we embraced, a mixture of laughter and grief hanging in the air. The legal proceedings that followed were intense. I testified against the adoption agency, my voice shaking but resolute. They didn't just steal children, I told the court. They stole futures and families' trust. Robert's trial was separate but equally satisfying. Watching him led away in handcuffs lifted a weight off my shoulders. Through it all, Dr. Carter remained my rock. One evening, after a long day in court, we grabbed coffee, and he took my hand. Claudia, you're the strongest person I know, he said softly. I looked into his eyes and saw a future I hadn't dared hope for. Months later, we all met at the park. Me, Ethan, Lisa, and Tom. As I watched Ethan play soccer with Tom, Lisa sat beside me. Thank you, she said. Thank you for loving him when we couldn't. I squeezed her hand. Thank you for sharing him with me. As the sun began to set, I reflected on our journey. It had been painful, terrifying, and at times felt impossible. But watching Ethan laugh with his birth father while his other mom sat beside me, I realized something profound. Family isn't just blood. It's love, sacrifice, and doing what's right, no matter the cost. Sometimes, family is what you make it. Against all odds, I found myself asking, if you were in Ethan's biological parents' shoes, could you give up your child to someone who raised them, even if it meant sacrificing your own chance to be their primary parent? What would you do in this situation?